and we're on the final chapter, chapter 11, and it's called Lessons Learned. Throughout this book, we have seen that certain brainwaves and brain regions are constantly associated with psi abilities. Sometimes these patterns seem specific to a particular ability, and other times they seem to cross over. While not everyone shows the same activation or deactivation patterns, the fact that the same brain regions and brain waves keep showing up suggestions. The fact that the same brain regions and brain waves keep showing up suggests that there is something important about their functioning in relation to psi. In fact, these brain patterns seem to be directly related to certain attitudes, intentions, and states of consciousness. When we practice and develop these mental states, we change the brain. When we change the brain, we create an opportunity to develop these skills. In regard, an ideal psychic development approach might involve both training of specific mental states and the creation of ideal brain conditions. Most of the physics, mediums, and healer studies describe 5 mental states necessary for successful psi. These can be summarized and focus, connection, stayed relaxed, listening, and trusting. Focus. This refers to how the psi practitioners directed their attention toward the task at hand. In some cases, it seems to require a single point. In some cases, it seems to require a single-pointed concentration, while at other times it requires broader attention state, becoming aware of any information that moves into consciousness without screening or directing. Connecting. Whether connecting to another person, such as might occur with telepathy or energy healing, connecting with a disembodied entity such as spirit guide or discarnate human, or connecting to a specific object such as ESP, games, or PK. Many practitioners describe a sense of moving beyond their limited normal ego boundaries to establish a sense of empathy or resonance with another. Relax. This can take many forms, including physical relaxation, but also mental relaxation, which of course is connected. In general, if there's an excess amount of mental efforting involving in a task, it is less likely to occur. Practitioners describe more success when their practice is in a state of flow, happening easily and automatically. When we overthink or attempt to force these skills, it often doesn't work. Listen. In this context, listening means listening to the soft, subtle voice within. Whether this is considered intuition, your higher self, or disembodied guide or helper, there is a different kind of attention required to hear or see or know the information. It is often quiet and generally drowned out by a louder, more insistent conscious mind. Trust. This relates to the ability to accept the reality and accuracy of the information received when listening. If we second-guess information received or get caught in doubt or analysis, it corrupts that accuracy of the information and leads us astray. Of course, it is still important to be discerning and recognize when the conscious mind is taking over, but when we truly get a hit, it requires acknowledgement. When we learn to truly trust the information received, we tend to get more. These 5 attitudinal qualities of psi activity seem to be reflected in the brain changes observed in our studies. In fact, we can use the brain imaging data to help clarify and expand our understanding of the mental skills required for psi. Below is a simplified summary of our findings. The right hemisphere. In general, we have seen that there are more changes in activity in the right hemisphere than the left across all psi abilities. The left hemisphere is typically responsible for language processing. Thinking too much seems to inhibit psi abilities. By contrast, the right hemisphere is generally more involved in experiential processing, a more subconscious/automatic mode of engaging in the moment. This suggests that psi abilities are more easily accessed by shutting down the language-oriented, analytic, problem-solving linear process of the left hemisphere, and allowing the automatic nature or natural processing of the right hemisphere to take over. The default mode network. The DMN is a group of brain regions that work together to facilitate certain states of consciousness. In particular, the DMN is responsible for creating our sense of self, our identity or ego. Anytime we are thinking about ourselves, we are engaging in the DMN. This network serves as a sort of internal structure that allows us to filter information from the environment and create meaning from what we experience. For many of us, this process limits our ability to believe or experience anything that does not fit into our societal programming. Temporarily shutting down or distributing the normal activity of DMN can help increase our psychological flexibility that is associated with psi-related experiences. The right parietal lobe. This region of the brain is involved in establishing boundaries between the self and others. When the normal functioning of this area is disrupted, it seems to facilitate perspective taking and the ability to connect with energies outside of the small self. Changes in this region of the brain seem to typically occur through an increase of slow brain waves. This pattern appears to be most related to mediumship, spirit communication, and channeling. The right frontal lobe. This area is implicated in sustaining and directing attention. At times, this region seems to become activated, sometimes deactivated, and sometimes showing indications of both activation and deactivation at the same time. This suggests a change. It suggests a change in the way the person pays attention, which should not be surprising. At times, the attention may need to become more focused, and at other times it may need to become more spacious. It may be directed internally or externally, or some kind of combination of the above. The occipital lobes and gamma. The occipital lobes represent the most posterior section of the brain and are largely responsible for visual processing. This area of the brain frequently lights up during a psychic and mediumship practices. When there are several brainwave changes observed across practitioners, there is a relatively consistent increase of gamma brainwaves. Gamma is the fastest brainwave and is associated with activation as well as higher states of consciousness, such as being in a flow of state during psychedelic experiences and lucid dreaming. It is thought that this gamma activation in the occipital lobe represents the inner seeing of the practitioner. While not all practitioners receive psychic information visually, it is possible that this activation represents a broader perception processing. Gamma activation does not seem to favor the right or left hemisphere. The area of activation may be related to which visual field the practitioner is engaging to see or process the psi information. If the information is processed in the left visual field, we would expect to see the right occipital lobe become engaged and vice versa. Theta. Theta represents one of the slower brainwaves, occurring between 4 and 8 cycles per second, which is 4 to 8 hertz. With mediums and psychics, excessive theta often shows up at a baseline in the frontal lobes when they're not engaging in any particular skill, but just sitting down doing nothing. When this is observed outside of psi-related activities, it tends to be associated with ADHD. That is, difficulty sustaining attention and problems in inhibiting thoughts, emotions, or behaviors. It seems possible, if not probable, that certain ADHD characteristics may be helpful with psi abilities. For example, having a tendency toward disinhibition, and a diffuse attention may make it easier to accept new or unusual information without screening it out. While this may make it difficult to attend to everything in the physical world, it may make it easier to tune in the spiritual world. Supporting this notion, theta is also associated with connecting to subconscious aspects of the mind, given that these brain regions / brainwaves seems important to psi-related abilities. The obvious question is, how can I get my brain to do that? Clearly, some people are just born this way. People like Laura Lynn Jackson, Joanne Gerber, and Janine Kim appear to have a natural ability to shift their brainwave activity in just the right way to access these abilities. But what if you're not naturally gifted this way? It is possible to retrain the brain, to help it become more flexible and fluid, in other words, to become more psychic. Without fail, every professional medium, psychic, and energy healer I have interviewed has told me that everyone has these abilities. The trick is to learn how to access them. As Trebor 7 stated, it is more like remembering that you have these abilities and learning to trust yourself. I asked Carolyn Corey, director and writer of the documentary Superhuman, if she believed that anyone could develop psi skills. She explained that it is not really about developing, more about uncovering. She explained that children are often able to demonstrate psi abilities easily. You just ask them to do something, like read a book through a blindfold, and they do it. They don't think about it. They don't consider whether it is reasonable. They just do it, having not yet been convinced that it is impossible. Apparently, this fluid, flexible way of connecting with the world typically lasts about till the age of 8, after which is gradually replaced by more sober, rational, limited thinking and beliefs. Interestingly, age 8 is about the time that brainwaves begin shifting from theta dominant state toward more of an alpha dominant state. It is also around this age that most children have fully entered the concrete optional stage of cognitive development. Concrete operational is the third stage of cognitive development theory proposed by Jean Piaget, and is characterized by the development of organized and rational thinking. Perhaps what happens is that we all begin with a strong natural ability for psi. Our brains are open, flexible, and non-judgmental. As we get older, the brain changes. The brainwaves speed up and activation moves towards left hemispheric dominance. We are rewarded for this way of processing information through formal education and cultural influences, leading to a significant rewiring of the brain and closing down or inhibition of our own natural psi abilities. In this context, developing psi abilities is more of remembering or an unlearning. Apparently, we need to learn how to maintain enough cognitive and psychological flexibility to access more of our right-brained processing, while limiting the influence of the left brain. For some, this tendency may occur naturally or easily. For others, it may require significant brain retraining. The brain training methods described below can be used to help unlock or improve psi abilities. Meditation. Throughout this book, we have discussed ways that meditation may be a helpful tool in exploring or unlocking psi potential. Of course, meditation is not a single practice. It's an umbrella term that covers a wide range of practices. At the Neuromeditation Institute, we have identified 5 primary styles of meditation based on the way that attention is directed, the intention, what brain waves are involved, and in which brain regions. Each of these styles may offer something particular to uncovering of psi abilities. You can find guided meditations for each of the 5 styles, and then the YouTube is Neuromeditation Institute, so maybe check that out. Focus meditation. Meditative practices with this emphasis involve sustaining attention on a single object or intention. Basically, you direct attention toward a specific target, such as a breath or a mantra or your third eye. When the mind becomes distracted and begins searching for something more interesting, you recognize this as quickly as you can, then gently shift your attention back to the target. These practices activate and exercise the frontal lobes, making it a perfect practice for anyone hoping to improve their attention, memory, or their cognitive focus. We saw several examples of the right front lobes become activated during tasks such as telepathy, mediumship, and psychokinesis, suggesting that it may be important in some cases to develop the capacity to maintain a concentrated, single-pointed attention. Mindfulness meditation. While this practice has gained a lot of attention in recent years, the exact definition of mindfulness is still being debated. Following the example of Jon Kabat-Zinn, the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, we define mindfulness as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and without judgment. It is the ability to observe things without creating stories about them. Mindfulness involves experiencing thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and sensory inputs as pure sensations, no interpretations, no judgments, no analysis. These practices tend to quiet down and relax attention in the frontal lobe regions, creating somewhat of a separation from the typical way the mind tends to operate. Because mindfulness practices teach non-attachment, because mindfulness practices teach non-attachment, these approaches are powerful tools when working to manage anxiety and stress. From a psi perspective, mindfulness may be the perfect tool to engage in an attentional process a bit differently than those explored in focus practices. Our attention during mindfulness is more relaxed and open. It is allowing, unrestricted, flowing form of attention. This is likely to be a similar style of attention that is observed with mediums and psychics who showed a reduction of activity in the frontal lobes. Rather than orienting attention to a single object, which requires activation, mindfulness, rather than orienting attention to a single object, which requires activation, mindfulness provides a broad attention to anything and everything that moves across the field of awareness. You might recall that Laura Lynn Jackson showed a significant decrease of activity in the frontal lobes during both psychic and mediumship readings. Open heart meditation. These practices involved activating a positive feeling state and then directing those feelings towards self or others. Practices such as loving kindness, compassion, gratitude, and forgiveness fit in this category. These practices can be very helpful for anyone dealing with resentment, unresolved grief, anger management, or anyone simply wanting to be better understanding others. When you experience a felt sense of the positive emotions that are encouraged at these practices, you activate specific portions of the right hemisphere. This part of the brain is important for empathy and perspective taking, which may be a key element to certain psychic tasks such as telepathy, as well as PK and energy healing. The insula, which is the right hemisphere, is located in the temporal lobe. Located in the temporal lobe just above the ear, and was an area that became engaged when Joanne Gerber was involved in a psychic reading. The practice of open heart meditation may also facilitate changes in the right parietal lobe, which is also involved in perspective taking and boundaries between self and other. In fact, certain open heart practices such as Tonglen invite the meditator to take on the suffering of others, transmute that energy, and then send out feelings of compassion, love, and well-being. The RPL was consistently accessed brain region. The RPL was a consistently accessed brain region throughout this book, suggesting that the ability to intentionally soften ego boundaries is a key element to psi abilities. Practices in this category represent the stereotype of meditation. This is a state in which internal chatter has been reduced to a minimum. Sometimes it is described as a feeling of spaciousness or emptiness. This state is common in traditions like Zen or transcendental meditation. Not surprisingly, the brain patterns connected to the practices show a significant quieting of many regions of the brain, including the default mode network and language centers, because these practices essentially involve interrupting the normal process of selfing. These practices can be very helpful for any concerns connected to distorted or inaccurate perception of self. Nearly every practitioner I spoke to while writing this book emphasized the importance of quieting the mind. To be more precise, they seem to be describing a reduction of activity in the thinking, analytic mind, the mind that wants to have an internal conversation about everything that is happening. The fact that the DMN becomes less active during these practices shows us that the tendency to think about your identity or yourself during these practices is reduced. This may provide an opportunity to tune into information beyond the self. Meditations in this category involve letting go of attentional control while in a deep state of physical and mental relaxation. These practices can include dreamlike imagery, transcendent experiences, and activation of subconscious material. Practices that facilitate this state of consciousness assist in the development of openness, surrender, lowering of psychological defense, and creativity. The connection between the type of meditative state and psi ability should be obvious. This is a state in which the normal screening process of the brain is temporarily inhibited, allowing a hidden or otherwise subconscious material to come to the surface. This state shares some similarities with psychedelic states. Experimenting with altered states of consciousness may facilitate a development of psi abilities in at least two ways. First, there are stories like Janet Myers, who after an ASC experience with holotropic breathwork, unlocked abilities that she did not have beforehand. In her case, she started spontaneously channeling voices of shamans from South America. How and why this kind of big shift happens in some cases is not clear, but suggests that the ASC somehow opened or unlocked this ability. In fact, if you refer back to Chapter 2, we found that a specific region of Janet's brain would essentially go offline when she was engaged in a channeling. The other ways that ASC may increase psi abilities is by increasing the brain's flexibility or entropy. This increased flexibility serves as a purpose similar to the deep states of meditation by temporarily removing normal filters in the consciousness and allowing more subtle information to come through. For most of us, we spend much of our waking consciousness leaning toward the low entropy state. This is probably useful while navigating the physical world, as it allows us to block out distractions and stay focused on what is right in front of us. However, this prevents us from tapping into subtle sources of information. While ASC may be achieved through various means, including breathwork, sensory deprivation, sensory overload, vibroacoustics, and others, most ASC psi-related research comes from the field of psychedelic medicine, such as LSD and psilocybin. In an article published in the International Journal of Transpersonal Studies, David Luke provides a comprehensive view of the literature related to psychedelics and psi phenomena, noting that there have been more than 200 such publications. In the beginning of the article, he reports that psi-related experiences have been studied in regions to psychedelics since 1950s. Luke goes on to list 18 qualities of the psychedelic state that seem related to psi experiences. These include transcendence of space and time, release of unconsciousness material into the conscious mind, increased openness, increased optimism towards impossible realities, intensity of feeling, and intensity of subtle changes. In addition to the immediate impact of ASC, on expanding consciousness, it is noted that psychedelics may also result a long-term change that may be psychoconductive. For example, it is not uncommon for someone to have a profound psychedelic experience that leads to a permanent change in the person's ideas and beliefs about reality, leading to greater openness to unusual experiences. I have personally heard first-hand accounts from dozens of psychedelic users describing their experiences. They have convinced them that there is much more to our existence than can be explained by a physical body. Friends and colleagues have told me stories about being connected and feeling one with everything in the universe, meeting angels and spirit guides, communicating with ancestors, engaging with aliens, astral travel, psychic surgery, transforming into plants or animals, being able to manipulate energy, and see into the future. Inevitably, when they relate to these experiences, they describe them as feeling more real than our conversation. Of course, as noted somewhere in the book, exploring ASC is not for everyone and should not be approached thoughtfully and should be approached thoughtfully and carefully. Regardless of the induction technique, ASC experiences can be intense and overwhelming if you are not properly prepared. It is strongly recommended that any ASC work be explored with an experienced teacher or guide in a monitoring setting. In a perfect world, this experience would include significant preparation time. Preparation sessions can be helpful in assessing your readings for the experience, clarifying intentions, managing expectations, outlining the process, as well as exploring any fears or concerns you may have. After the ASC session, you should spend several weeks actively engaged in integration of the experience. These sessions can assist in processing and synthesizing the experience, and in identifying and enacting steps towards implementing any insights received during your altered state of consciousness. This is a time to take advantage of the temporary neural plasticity achieved through the ASC and clearly work towards your goals. Using brain-based biofeedback and or neurostimulation technologies, it is possible to train and entrain the brain in specific ways. Our preliminary research suggests that these approaches can be used strategically to help the brain become more flexible and open, potentially exaggerating our natural psi abilities. I recommend using one or more of the approaches detailed below alongside consistent psi practice and monitoring with an experienced psychic medium or energy healer. Beginning meditators often complain that they do not know if they are doing it right, or giving up before realizing its significant benefits. Advanced meditators often reach a plateau and struggle to reach the next or deeper level in their practice. Traditionally, meditation practitioners have sought a guru or sangha for support and direction. Yet many people are not interested in or have access to that kind of approach. A potential solution to these challenges involves using brain biofeedback to increase awareness of subtle states of consciousness and speed the meditation learning process. Simply put, biofeedback is any kind of mechanism that allows you to receive information about your physiology. This can include heart rate, skin temperature, or other physiological measures of nervous system arousal. The brainwave biofeedback, or EEG biofeedback, it is possible to monitor brain activity and use this information to gently guide the user into specific states. I almost said Pacific. Oh my god. Into specific states of meditation. This process is generally called neuromeditation. By tracking brainwave activity in specific regions of the brain, we can tell if someone is focused or relaxed. We can tell if the mind is wandering, if they are engaged in body-based emotions, or if they have entered a space of internal quiet. By monitoring this activity and connecting it directly to the intent of meditation, it is possible to help meditators learn to quickly enter a desired state of consciousness and maintain this state for increased periods of time. Let me provide a simple example of how this works with focus style meditation. In this type of meditation, a person directs attention toward a single target, such as the breath, a candle flame, a mantra, or third eye. When the mind inevitably wanders, they recognize that the mind wandering and gently return attention to the target. By monitoring brainwave activity in specific regions of the brain, we can get a pretty good idea if the person is actually engaged in meditation or is instead caught in the mind's wandering. When the attention is focused, they receive an auditory reward such as an increased volume of ambient meditation music. This feedback indicates to the person that they are not, or that they are on track. When the mind wanders and the brainwaves shift out of the desired pattern, the volume of the music decreases, providing direct and nearly immediate feedback to the meditator, allowing them to refine their internal awareness. Historically, the cost of the required equipment and the necessary training involved has made this approach inaccessible to non-neurofeedback practitioners. However, recent advances have changed all of that. Now there are Bluetooth, wireless, dry sensor, and EEG hardware solutions that make the hookup very easy. For example, the BrainBit Flex EEG caps allows you to move the 4 sensors to any location, providing the flexibility necessary for many different neuromeditation approaches. Oh my goodness. This type of device can be used with Divergence Neuro software, which allows you to access the neuromeditation programs right from your smartphone or tablet. You can find out more about where to find these products at the resource section. Audio-visual entertainment technologies were discussed in Chapter 3 and 6. This technique uses both sound and light simulation to impact brainwave patterns. Most AVE devices consist of a set of eyeglasses with lights built into the eye sets and headphones. The glasses and headphones are connected to either a small controller box or the computer. Built-in programs in the software allow you to choose from a variety of settings that will cause the lights and glasses to flicker on and off at the specific frequencies. The tones in the headset will follow the same pattern. Once you choose your program, you sit back, close your eyes, and enjoy the show for 15 to 25 minutes. The idea is that providing the brain with a consistent repetitive signal, it will follow along. For example, if I choose a relaxation program, the lights might flicker on and off 10 times a second. The brain responds to each of these signals, producing 10 cycles per second brainwave, which is 10 hertz, which is the alpha frequency range associated with relaxed internal attention. Using this technology, you can influence the brain by encouraging it to reward certain brainwave patterns, which can influence your state of consciousness. People suffering from depression, ADHD, or cognitive decline often have the opposite challenge. Their brains may be producing an excess amount of slow brainwaves, causing them to feel tired, unmotivated, inattentive, impulsive, or mentally foggy. AVE protocols designed to speed up the brain a bit can often help pull the brain out of this pattern, resulting in a feeling of having more energy, optimism, executive function, and self-control. AVE technologies are often used as an at-home adjunct to neurofeedback therapy. However, they can also be used to facilitate certain meditations or non-ordinary states of consciousness. For example, some meditations often lead to an increase of brain waves between 8 and 10 hertz. By using the AVE protocol, that stimulates 9 hertz actively while you're practicing certain meditation approaches. You can provide a boost to that specific meditative state. Protocols that are regularly shifted frequencies and colors or maintain a solid color for an extended time can be used to induce altered states of consciousness. While there is a solid research behind this technique, it is important to note that the results may vary. Everyone is different, and it is impossible to know which approaches may or may not help without the appropriate assessment and some trial and error. The good news is that people tend to notice any change in mood or mental state soon after the session is completed. By experimenting with various protocols, light intensity, time of day, the length of the session, it is usually possible to find one or more approaches that help balance the nervous system and shift to the desired meditative ASC state of awareness. Pulsed electromagnetic field It's okay. Various researchers have demonstrated that toxins, aging, and chronic stress diminish the voltage in cells, inhibiting their ability to do their jobs effectively and efficiently. In fact, people with chronic illness consistently show serious compromised cellular power. As Bryant A. Myers, author of the book The Fifth Element of Health, he put in, if your cells have energy, you are healthy. If not, you are sick. Exposure to specific frequencies can boost the health and functioning of these cells. The frequencies that seem most beneficial are those that are associated with the natural frequency of the Earth. Without getting too technical, the Earth generates its own electromagnetic field. According to the United States Geological Survey, the Earth's outer core is in a state of turbulent convection as the result of radioactive heating and chemical differentiation. This sets up a process that is a bit like naturally occurring electrical generator, where the kinetic energy is converted to electrical and magnetic energy. While the frequencies generated by the Earth vary, the dominant frequency is around 11.75 Hz. In addition to the Earth's EMFs, there is another source of EMF that exists between the Earth and the ionosphere. This energy is generated primarily by lightning strikes, solar flares, and other energy discharges. This field is referred to as the Schumann resonance and has a dominant frequency of around 7.83 Hz. The EMF generated by the Earth and the Schumann resonance created by the EMF field that all living beings on this planet are bathed in it. These are the frequencies of nature. When we are in tune with these frequencies, the cells of the brain and body are more energized and productive. Consequently, spending time in nature may be one of the best forms of medicine. However, as a supplement, it can be helpful to increase exposure to the Earth-based frequencies through PEMF technology. The top 8 benefits of this approach, as reported by Bryant Myers, include stronger bones, endorphin production, pain relief, better sleep, and human growth hormone secretion, more energy, and adenosine triphosphate production, which is ATP, powers cellular metabolism, better oxygenation, circulation, improved immunity, relaxation and stress reduction, and nerve/tissue regeneration. While the Earth's EMF fields have dominant frequencies, they actually produce a wide range of frequencies that generally range from 0 to 30 Hz, the same basic frequency range of the brain. As we have seen throughout this book, changing the behavior of frequencies in the brain can have a significant impact on consciousness. By using PEMF devices to intentionally direct specific frequencies to the brain, we can influence consciousness, slowing things down, speeding them up, or disrupting their normal functioning. This approach was featured and described in Chapter 6. In that chapter, we discussed the work of Michael Persinger, who saw that a consumer-grade PEMF device could be used to stimulate and exaggerate psi-related brain activity. resulting in an enhanced experience. When used for these purposes, it has been my experience that it is best to use that device during meditation and then practice your psi abilities afterward. Of course, everyone is different. Like the approach recommended with ABE, it may be necessary to experiment with various programs, placements, length of sessions, and timing of practice to achieve optimal results. The process of writing this book has shown me that the humans are capable of much more than most of us have ever imagined. While we may not fully understand how or why, it seems clear to me now that psi abilities are a natural and normal part of existence. When these abilities are inconsistent, messy, vague, and complicated, it is because our brains are interfering. The brain filters, limits, and distorts the information we receive as a strategy to help us get by on the planet. In that regard, it is helpful. If we did not have filters, limits, and meaning-making cognitive distortions, we would be overwhelmed by sensory information. Perhaps the challenge is understanding how the mind works and learning how to intentionally navigate varied states of consciousness. Rather than being stuck in a narrow perceptual state, we can develop cognitive and psychological flexibility. We can learn to move smoothly between logical, structured, and analytic processing and the subtle, mysterious, intuitive ways of understanding. We can be scientists and mystics, and skeptics and believers. And that is the end of this book. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.